Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. I'm so excited to have our guest on today, Saloni Doshi with EcoEnclose. My name is Michelle Mather. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the founder of the Green Marketing Academy. We are an educational platform that teaches marketing professionals and teams on how to adopt more sustainable, ethical, inclusive, and accessible marketing practices. I have been looking forward to this LinkedIn Live. I look forward to all of them, but Saloni and I connected years ago on a virtual summit, I believe. I don't even remember the name now, but I was super impressed with what EcoEnclose was doing. They're pretty much my number one recommendation when people ask about sustainable packaging solutions and shipping solutions. They are always my go-to. So a lot of the members in our community, they know how much I love everything that you're doing. So we'll go ahead and dive in. But Saloni, if you want to do just a brief intro of yourself, and then we'll dive into our questions here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad to be reconnecting with you. Michelle does a great job. So I'm one of the owners and the CEO and Chief Sustainability Geek at EcoEnclose. In EcoEnclose, we're really on a mission to transition all brands to the most circular packaging possible and to eventually make packaging truly circular. And so we have the privilege of working with 25,000 different brands of all sizes, ranging from, small, I would say micro brands to large Fortune 500 brands, really guiding them through the process of like what packaging makes the most sense for them, is the most circular for them, meets their budget, and will sort of push our whole movement forward at the same time. So that's what I get to do every day.
Awesome. Yeah. And I have the privilege of on this LinkedIn Live Spotlight series, we showcase a lot of change makers and leaders like yourself that help inspire both climate activism and just, better solutions out there that we can get more people on board with. So awesome. And if there are any questions for those of you who are tuning in live, please drop them into the thread, and I'll make sure that we circle back on any questions at the end. So first, if you could tell us, Saloni, a bit more about your why do you do this work, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a little bit of a unique story. My husband and I actually acquired EcoEnclose when it was really small. It was about 4 people. It was about 8 years ago. And we were in a place where I was actually working in sustainable agriculture at the time. I was supporting farms in the business process of moving from traditional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. So I was sort of in that headspace. My husband was like, always interested in acquiring a small business. And then when we found EcoEnclose, it became clear that it was sort of the intersection of my passion, his passion, and I think the future of commerce. And so I always say, like, if it wasn't EcoEnclose, I probably would not have been so involved. But because it was EcoEnclose, I gradually started spending a lot of time here and just found my passion here, which is why I do what I do, because you get to do 2 things at EcoEnclose. One is you get to make packaging better every day and to really try to create a hopeful green future. And then 2, I get to work with incredible brands who are super passionate and just incredible leaders. So how could I not want to do those 2 things?
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say, and you touched on this a bit in your intro, but what is the mission vision of EcoEnclose, especially as you head into the second half of the year now?
Yeah, big picture, we always say our North Star is that, one day we hope that EcoEnclose has been a catalyst to transitioning the whole nation to truly circular packaging. And then we always recognize, like, our packaging isn't perfect. It's not truly sustainable. It's not truly circular yet. And so each basically quarter, we're like, what are we doing alongside working with our brands to make our packaging better and better? But that's the North Star that sort of guides everything that we do.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed, there was an email, I think last week, about how packaging affects biodiversity. And it was really interesting. For anyone who's watching or tuning in for the recording, I'll put the link to join your newsletter in the comments, but it's just, I learned so much from every blog post and resource that your team sends out. It's just, you do a great job.
Thank you for reading them. You're always like, like, anybody on the other side reading this?
Yeah, they are.
A passion project for me to like make sense and untangle so many of the complicated issues of sustainability. So sometimes, like, even if nobody's reading it, I'm becoming better at helping other people navigate these decisions by figuring this out.
Yeah, definitely. Which of the UN Sustainable Development Goals is EcoEnclose primarily focused on? I mean, we have some assumptions here, and if
Yeah.
you could provide a little explanation behind each, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll say big picture, like I read and respect and love the UN sustainability goals. We are, ultimately we're focused on circularity above and beyond. So what we say is like, that means that we need an infrastructure in this country and across the world. In fact, globally, this is really important, that we create an infrastructure where materials can be reclaimed and remanufactured back into themselves. So it touches on a lot, but sometimes I find that when I try to plug into UN sustainability goals, I'm trying to plug our mission into a different framework. So when I'm talking to our team or talking to our brands, I really focus there and less sort of trying to map it, though you can imagine that there's a lot of mappings happening.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that. They've set a framework, but sometimes it's, you don't want to fit directly into a mold. You want to innovate and focus on the uniqueness of the brand too.
Yeah. And again, this sort of very clear focus of what we're trying to do, knowing that, yeah, like every time we're helping somebody make a decision, we are curbing carbon emissions. Every time we're thinking about our supply chain and the ethics in our supply, there's just so much overlap, but I don't
Right.
think that way on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And I have kind of an off the cuff question, because it's been really exciting to see some of the partnerships that you all have been working with. If you want to just speak briefly to that, for many of you that may not know about some of these partnerships, tell us a bit what you can about this.
Yeah, of course. It's actually one of my, also another great part of the job. So big picture, can I just step back really quickly and help people understand when we say we want a world that has truly circular packaging, we always say that there's two parts to it. One is that we want packaging to be made out of packaging as much as possible and turned back into packaging in its next life. And so that is a circular loop that requires a really strong infrastructure around reclaiming, recycling, brands and consumers actually purchasing that reclaimed content, right? So that's the like circularity, an important part of the circularity. And then the other part is that ideally the net inputs that go into that circular stream are restorative and regenerative rather than depleting, right? All of the main inputs that go into packaging today are generally depleting, right? There's fossil fuels, we're cutting down trees, we're, mining bauxite for aluminum. So the world is like, how do you change the inputs to be restorative? And then how do you have it continually be repurposed back into packaging? And so a lot of the partnerships that we work with are in that second part, which is like, how do you change the paradigm of the materials that are coming into market? And so, I think our most recent one is like just working so closely with Sway to see like, what are the commercial applications of the, great technology they're developing. And we spent a lot of time here because bio-based materials can be fraught. There are some bio-based materials that we have decided to reject, such as like conventionally grown corn is an example of something we said, like, that's probably not the right input for EcoEnclose. But seeing seaweed and the way that Sway is doing seaweed with the responsible sourcing stream is really exciting for us, because seaweed has the potential to restore coastal communities and coastal environments in its in how it's produced. And so that's a great partnership. We have a longstanding partnership with Living Ink, which is a developer of algae-based ink. And then we do have some partnerships that I think are sort of emerging on the horizon, but with what we call like next gen fibers, which would be alternatives to tree-based paper. Instead of making paper with trees, can you make it with agricultural waste or food waste? We've been looking at certified sustainable sugarcane as a carbon sequestering input as well, that as long as it's grown in restorative ways, it's a really interesting input. So there's just a lot of different, it's a really fun part of the work, because you get to dig into innovator, and work with innovators and inventors in a really cool way.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what's coming out next. It's been neat to see the applications with Sway making the plastic film for a lot of the different packaged goods.
Windows, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what do you feel is the greatest impact that your role has when it comes to encouraging greener marketing practices?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I'm always curious to know your answer to that question, as you're the expert there. I hope that one thing that we are doing, I'd say there's two parts to it. One is like helping people make the right choices. I always say, like, whether you work with EcoEnclose or not, I hope that we can create some clarity in chaos. Like, the world of sustainability chaos, right? Like people are slapping green labels on virgin boxes just because they're curbside recyclable. Like, and it's, I get it. You always want to find the sustainability claim, but you want to go, if you're a sustainable brand, you want to go to the farthest level you possibly can, given your operational and budgetary constraints, right? Before, and not just green label and everything. So helping people who really care about doing the right thing navigate the space. And then I think the second part is helping them, hopefully arming them with some of the information to present it to their customers really in a compelling way, without greenwashing, with transparency, with clarity, and perhaps even educating your customer at the same time. And in doing so, like strengthening your brand's authenticity around sustainability.
Yeah, right. There's so much, as you can see in your emails and on your website, that goes into this. It's much more than just claiming that you have compostable packaging. I mean, that we could dive into that for an hour on its own, but yeah.
And I always say, like, people, how can a brand, especially like a small brand owner, like how can they navigate? That's not, to expect a business owner to navigate that complexity isn't really fair. And so in some ways, like, that's why we have to exist, because that is actually our job. And so if we can help people make better choices and understand the rationale behind their choices, like, hopefully that's the win.
Yeah. And one of my goals of founding this platform with the Green Marketing Academy is to do the work for the small businesses or the marketers, because as you know, you spend hours and hours researching, and we don't always have the luxury of spending that time to find the best solution. So sharing resources like EcoEnclose and Sway and a lot of other packaging and doing that work up front is really helpful to our community as well.
Particularly, you guys have such an important role to play now, because there's that balance of, like, if you're making investments in sustainability, and frankly, there is still a green premium associated with them, you want to showcase them to the world, but you also, like, need to tread carefully around greenwashing. And you've got so many brands that are like green hushing now. And, as your agents or your academy can do a really good job helping people navigate that, because if you're not getting credit for those investments, you're apt to stop making them. And that's also not a sustainability win.
Right. And it's a fine line, but we have to try, and we have to put something out there to get, positive or negative feedback to make it better. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, tell us how our audience and our community can best support you and get connected or stay in touch with EcoEnclose.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's any businesses out there that are curious to chat sustainable packaging, you can always, I would say, reach out to our customer service team, which is at hello@ecoenclose.com. You can also always reach out to me. I'm at Saloni@ecoenclose.com. I love talking to brands of all sizes, especially as they're grappling with questions, or they're like, this is the packaging choice I made. How do you feel about it? Is it the right one? What data supports it or doesn't support it? You mentioned our newsletter for people who like to geek out weekly, or it goes out like weekly or biweekly, depending on the season. It could be a great resource. If you go to our website, there's also just like chock full of resources, a resource library, that if you're just like, I want to spend an hour just like understanding some of these topics at a high level, you can also go there. And then I would just love if anybody listening is like, oh, I wish EcoEnclose would offer X, or I wish EcoEnclose would provide a resource around Y that they don't yet provide. I'd love that input, because you guys are out there doing the work and running your businesses, and we're sort of guessing on like what's important to you guys. So as much information as I can get, the better.
Yeah, and if we can ever put out a survey of some sort to our members and our community, let me know. That would be something we'd love to help out
with. Insightful. Yeah, let's definitely talk about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will certainly tag you if questions, a lot of questions do come in after the fact, once people had a chance to watch and kind of absorb all the information. But thank you so much for your time. It's such an honor to have you joining us. And I look forward to staying in touch and seeing all the exciting plans that EcoEnclose has in store.
I'm excited to stay in touch too. And I'm actually, some of what we talked about, I'm like, I'm excited to sync up with you after this and understand where your head's at on some of these thorny issues. So exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll be back in a couple more weeks with our next LinkedIn Live, and hopefully we'll see you then. All right.